Look out, Facebook. Now you can drive website visits directly from Civic Shout. Introducing Express CPC, Civic Shout's new cost-per-click ad system. Everyone already knows that Civic Shout's the best way to grow your opt-in email list. Folks like M&R, Greenpeace, and Feeding America stand by it. So can you. Grow your list and run traffic campaigns that hit so hard, your team will wonder how you did it. Environmental Action called Civic Shout a wildly better way to grow your email list. And Clarify Agency saw a 200% return on ad spend in just 2 months. Civic Shout, the ad platform for progressive causes. Head to civicshout.com/partners to learn more. That's civicshout.com/partners.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Hello Merge Tag, a podcast about social media, politics, and where they intersect. We check in with candidates, consultants, strategists, and more to find out what's working and what's not in the political digital world. I'm your host, Josh Clemens of Reverbal Communications. We help progressive campaigns and organizations win the internet. Have questions you want answered on the pod? Have a guest or topic recommendation? Just want to say hey? Drop us a line at hello@reverbalcommunications.com. Find all episodes at hellomergetag.com or wherever you stream podcasts. Now let's dive in.
Throughout this episode, my guest Evan Sutton takes a strong stance against Tesla while making it clear that his aggressive approach does not endorse violence or vandalism. He repeatedly emphasizes that any actions against Tesla should not involve physical harm or property destruction. After our recording, some of those targeting Tesla as a means to hurt Elon Musk's business interests did in fact resort to vandalism and property damage. We didn't discuss this during our conversation because it hadn't yet happened. I wanted to clarify that before we get into our still very relevant discussion about making Tesla toxic. So, with that said, let's dive in. Recently, I was meeting up with some friends. We found each other in the parking lot, and they were standing in front of a Tesla. I knew they didn't drive a Tesla, so I asked them, surprised, if they'd gotten a new car. They laughed, and I flippantly gave the car a big thumbs down. As this was happening, the car's owner walked up. Whoops. I felt bad. I was joking around, not trying to shame some guy. But according to my guest today, shaming him is exactly what I should have done. Evan Sutton is the founder of Firekit Campaigns, where he works with unions, Democrats, and nonprofits to build powerful stories in today's fractured media landscape. Before founding Firekit Campaigns, he worked as senior leadership at the American Federation of Teachers and the New Organizing Institute. Evan started his career in politics and advocacy in 2007 as a field organizer on Barack Obama's campaign. He recently wrote a piece for Melissa Ryan's Control Alt-Right Delete called Make Tesla Toxic. That piece will be linked in the show notes, along with his follow-ups from a few days later called Not All Tesla Owners. So, Evan, first off, thanks so much for coming on the pod. I've long appreciated your ability to cut through the noise on social and tie back like what was happening in the world to why we're in this fight. Let's start by summarizing the two pieces for those who haven't read them. Kind of walk us through the arguments you're making in these two pieces.
Yeah, happy to. And thanks so much for having me, Josh. Similarly, I've been grateful for all the work that you do coordinating people like us and keeping us all working together. So it's great to be here. So the first piece is really about just how rich a target Tesla is and what we can do about that. So for folks who don't know, Tesla is massively overvalued. As of close of business today, it's valued, I think, somewhere between $800 and $900 billion. That puts it at the current valuation. If you add it up, basically every other major car maker in the world, they would come combined, right? So Toyota, Honda, GM, Stellantis, the whole thing, Ferrari, right? Like you add them all together, and they combined are worth about the same as Tesla is today, which I think anybody can look at and go, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Tesla's been on this hype-fueled rocket ship since the beginning of the pandemic when it first became profitable. So whatever that is, 12, 13, 14 years into being a public company, it's finally become profitable. Electric cars are suddenly all the rage, and Tesla just goes on this crazy rocket ship to the moon. And it's continued that hype train in part because investors seem confused and think that it's a tech company. And so in some ways it's being valued like a tech company. In part, it had a huge boost right after the election because a bunch of people were like, well, Elon's Donald's best friend now, so his shit's going to be so valuable. The truth is that Tesla is so dramatically overvalued that as soon as a tiny pinprick is able to pop through that bubble, it's going to come crashing down. And with it, Elon Musk's wealth. Now, as it stands right now, Tesla accounts for about 2/3 of Elon Musk's wealth. And the most important part of that is that it's his only liquid wealth because all of his other wealth is tied up in privately held companies. Now, the way that rich people get liquid money is typically that they borrow against their stock, and you can't borrow against stock in a privately held company, or at least it's a lot harder. And so if we can drag down the value of Elon Musk's shares in Tesla, not only does it send a powerful message to other corporate titans who might be thinking about, cowering before Donald Trump, that there's a price, but it actually meaningfully hurts his ability to fuck around in elections, to fund bad things around the world. And it also is going to be a really important point of just making him make mistakes. His brand, his ego are all tied up in Tesla, in addition to his money. And if we can really put some hurt on that, I think we're going to start to see him flailing and doing crazier and crazier things. And we're already seeing reports that the rest of the Trump administration is starting to get pretty sick of him.
Right. And so part of the purpose of the second piece was to deal with the response to the first piece, but why don't you share kind of like what's been the response in general, the two pieces? Because I feel like it got some traction. I saw it quite a bit, and I'm curious like what you've been hearing. I know a lot of folks were like uncomfortable with the idea of like thumbs downing people on the road driving Teslas, but I mean, you're quite openly advocating, not only should we be organizing outside of Tesla dealerships, if you see a Tesla on the road, you should let that person know that you do not approve of their lifestyle choices. So talk about like that, and also like what kind of responses you've been getting from polite society, if you will.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I've gotten overwhelmingly positive feedback on both of the pieces. And yeah, one of the action steps that I said in the first piece was we need to make Tesla drivers uncomfortable. And I elaborated on that in the second piece. The really important thing to know here is that until last year, Tesla had never spent a dime on advertising. Tesla's entire sales model is we're going to sell people a car that they brag about, and they're going to do the selling for us. And then the second part of it is we're going to be cool and hip and fresh and edgy, and we're going to get lots of cool media for it, right? The media has already reversed. And I want to say the folks who have set up Tesla Takedown as a movement, right? Alex Winter and the people around him who are really, kind of the pivot point for all these protests and all that. They've been doing incredible work. I'm really excited that I've been able to plug in with them over the last week, and I'm finding ways to help. And I've been organizing protests in my own community. And so taking down that Tesla brand and making it uncool to drive a Tesla is really important to this whole project, because until Tesla drivers themselves stop recommending the cars, the advertising funnel stays open, right? And how do you make people stop recommending their car? Well, when we wanted people to stop smoking, the thing that actually changed that was we made smoking uncool. For my entire young life, I'm, kind of an old head here, relatively speaking, right?
I think we're pretty similar, and yeah, smoking was cool for a while.
Cool, right? In the
Right.
movies, on TV, down on the corner outside of school, right? Like smoking was cool. And then in the very late 90s, into kind of the mid-aughts, there was this really heavy push to make smoking uncool and gross. And when that hit a tipping point, all of a sudden, smoking in the United States tanked, right? All of the health warnings didn't do anything meaningful to Big Tobacco's brand. All of the crazy stories about their bad behavior didn't really do anything. It was when we made it uncool. And that's the same thing that needs to happen to Tesla. And so I'm not advocating for vandalizing people's cars. I'm not even in favor of like putting a sticker on somebody's car, to be honest. Like, hand people stickers by all means. There's a lot of Tesla drivers who want to disassociate themselves with Elon. But I do think that just giving people that moment of like confusion and discomfort is really valuable. And so, it's March. I live in Seattle. It's pretty chilly here, but I'm driving around with my window down so that I can stick my arm out the window and give a very obvious thumbs down as I pass a Tesla. And I tell you, the people who see it, their faces are very confused. They're getting less confused because more and more people are doing it, but they're still confused. And I want them to have that interaction. I want them to go home or go out to the bar or go to the office water cooler and be like, some jerk gave me a thumbs down just because of my car, because that's what's going to disrupt Elon's sales funnel the most effectively.
Interesting. It seems like you should get a little sign that, you can stick out your window like the way the Democrats had at the State of the Union last week. Your
So
Tesla is destroying the world.
So I'm unveiling it tomorrow, but I just went out and bought chalk markers so that I can write anti-Tesla messages on the windows of my minivan, so that as I drive around town, it's very obvious. There's no city in the country that has a more disproportionate share of Tesla registrations than Seattle. If you drive around Seattle,
Okay.
it's just like every third car is a Tesla. The registration data shows that. So like this is a prime market, but obviously people are buying them all over the country.
Sure.
So anywhere that you can just make people a little uncomfortable again, don't be a dick. Don't go yelling at people in a parking lot. Don't, key somebody's car. That's jerky behavior. But, just a firm thumbs down is going to be plenty, I think, along with the protests, to make people think like, wow, maybe my car is not cool and I shouldn't recommend it to people.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, connecting it to smoking is an interesting way to think about it. Like, it's true. Like, I remember smoking was quote unquote cool. When I was growing up, it was still in movies and TV shows. And then at some point it stopped. And connecting that like, we just need people who drive Teslas to stop feeling like it's a cool car to drive. And that will, it's obviously working. Like the stock is down 30% in the last, since the beginning of the year. Now, granted, he's still the wealthiest person in the world, but right before we recorded this, I was reading, he lost more in his wealth than almost every other billionaire has, he's still absurdly wealthy. But this has taken a hit. He lost over $100 billion since the beginning of the year. So there is something to be said for this strategy. So I did want to ask about the Tesla takedown movement, because obviously what you're writing about is a component of that. But I didn't think you were actually involved with that actual movement, but you've become involved with them. Like, how did that happen? Did they see what you were doing, or you reached out to them, or some combination?
I reached out. I've been, for the last 6 weeks or so, just trying to connect with anybody I could who was thinking about creative ways to take down Elon Musk. He's clearly an existential threat to democracy writ large, specifically American democracy is what I'm most concerned about.
Sure.
So honestly, it was just connecting through friends. The Tesla takedown movement is genuinely the most grassroots thing that I have ever been part of or seen. My friend Robert and I had planned to do a Tesla protest here in Seattle ourselves before the Tesla takedown stuff started going public. And then we were like, well, heck, let's plug in with that. So we had organized a protest, and then we met the people here who were also interested in organizing protests, and we've been expanding it. And I've then also just been reaching out to different friends, researchers that I worked with at AFT and campaigners that I know from other corners of the labor movement and the environment movement. And I finally was able to connect with some of the folks. I think the thing that I would love for people to know about this is that nobody's getting paid. Everyone who's working on this is volunteering.
Right.
It's literally just a bunch of people with different skill sets who want to do something about what Musk is up to and are willing to put in some of their time and some of their expertise and experience. And it's really exciting to me. I've been doing, you ran through some of my stuff, but I'm in my 18th year now as a paid political operative, whatever term you want to use.
Right.
I have been, lucky to be in senior leadership roles in some of the largest, advocacy adjacent type organizations in the country. And to see a group of folks who have no real resources other than their own passion, just standing up and going, let's work together, let's figure out how to do this. And the results, if you Google Tesla, 100% of the news results right now are about protests tanking Tesla's wealth. That's pretty freaking incredible.
I was just reading a whole story in 404 about a group of a Facebook group where Tesla Cybertruck owners are coming together to complain about all the hate that they're getting. And some of them are relishing being the bad guy in the WWE wrestling world. But a lot of them are genuinely, like you said, surprised. I don't think, when they bought a Tesla Cybertruck a year ago, they didn't realize what they were supporting. But now, obviously, I think it's hard to it's pretty hard to imagine somebody buying a Tesla today and not like recognizing that. But yeah, for those who already have them, and you argue that folks should be selling their Teslas. This is not like put a sticker on it. I mean, you want people to divest from the company in every way possible, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The best thing is for people to divest. Obviously, if for whatever set of circumstances you can't get out of your Tesla right now, like get yourself a sticker, throw it on there. There's no shortage of options. Now, I will say I advise against people getting the ones. I've seen one that seems to be pretty popular in some areas that's like anti-Elon Tesla Club. You're still advertising that Tesla is cool if you're like, I'm in a Tesla club. So get the ones that are like, I bought this before he was fascist, or just, like Elon in a red circle, whatever. That would be my advice. But my strongest advice is if you in any way can, get out now. Don't get stuck in the sunk cost fallacy. If you think you're underwater in your Tesla today, when you could still get a decent trade-in, when companies, Ford was offering an incentive to trade in for a Mach-E, Polestar was offering a pretty substantial incentive to trade in for one of their vehicles. Like, companies are still willing to take a Tesla at a pretty fair value. You can probably still sell it to individuals on a direct sale market. In 6 months, think about what your Tesla is going to be worth and how hard it's going to be to offload when the new ones are sitting on lots, the used ones are sitting on lots. Again, I'm not advocating for vandalism, but I think we can recognize that incidents of vandalism are going to continue. How many people are going to be willing to buy a car that they know is potentially a target of just random vandalism?
Right.
So if you can, get out now. And if you own Tesla stock, get out while it's still worth something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just try to get as far away from the company as you can. And I certainly hope that if you're stuck in a car that, you don't get screwed on it, but I think you're going to be in much worse shape in 6 months.
So I live in Wisconsin, and Musk is currently investing heavily in our April Supreme Court race, which is a extremely important race for those who don't follow Wisconsin politics. If we lose this race, we are literally going to go back to gerrymandered maps. After one cycle with fair maps and 15 years without them, we'll go back and we will lose the right to abortion. There's a lot of things that a conservative majority will definitely take away, a lot of freedoms. And Elon Musk has, I think, spent over $6.5 million already to buy a seat here. And actually, part of it is for business interests, because Wisconsin currently is not allowing him to sell Teslas. He's not allowed to have dealerships here. And that case is going to be before the Supreme Court. So he's trying to buy a justice that will decide that. But also, obviously, like Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, want a Republican Party that will gerrymander maps and throw out, lawsuits. So right now, the Wisconsin Democratic Party is investing in their People v. Musk campaign. Folks can check that out at peoplevmusk.com. So obviously, I'm very interested to see. I think there was a minute there where Musk had some momentum. He was using his money in a way that was gaining momentum, but I actually feel like the tide is turning. I'm seeing more and more people talk about Elon has become a story in the election in a way that I don't think he intended to. So I don't know. Is this something, are you following? It's the first political test case. So where Elon matters in the election since November. Is it something you're following, or it's just too remote from your part of the world? And any thoughts on making him the villain in the story instead of the guy we're running against, Brad Schimmel, who obviously could also be the villain in the story here?
No, I have been following it specifically for that reason, because it is really interesting. A lot of us tried to make him a villain in the lead up to the national elections, where he was dumping, an unknown at that point, but eventually we found out $277 million to buy Donald Trump the White House. And you didn't say it, but $6.5 million, I don't know the ins and outs, but I would guess that's probably 3 or 4 times the highest spend in a Wisconsin Supreme Court election in history.
The most expensive Supreme Court hit in history nationally was in Wisconsin 1 year ago when Jennifer Sewitz won her seat, and this race has now surpassed it. This is now the most expensive state Supreme Court race in history, only beating our race last year. So yes, absolutely. It is an astronomical amount of money for one person to be investing in a Wisconsin state Supreme Court race.
And I think the thing that we all need to realize as Democrats, as people who like democracy, whatever your political affiliation is, unless you genuinely believe that elections should be up for sale to the highest bidder, and I don't know a whole lot of people who believe that, right? I want you to realize that Elon Musk will be the highest bidder in any election that he wants to participate in. The amount of money this man has is beyond obscene. This is one of my like weird pet projects, is I like to try to visualize things like this. So if you took, the median American income is $80,000.
Okay.
Right. And if you got $100 bills worth $80,000, it's about that high. I don't know if we're doing video, but it's
like 6 inches, give or take.
Yeah, it's about 6 inches high. If you took the money that Elon Musk spent to buy this election for Donald Trump, $277 million, $100 bills, and stacked them on top of each other, it would come to just below the peak of the Eiffel Tower in $100 bills. Right? So you can compare that to, the six-ish inches for the median American annually. Now, if you took Musk's full wealth and stacked it in $100 bills, you would be through the atmosphere, past the Kármán line, past where the International Space Station orbits.
Oh, wow.
Like so deep into space, right? in Musk's wealth. So for him to drop $277 million is less than a quarter of, he's worth 300 and some billion dollars now. So it's like less than a 16th of a percentage of his income.
It'd be like you or me spending $50. Like it's
not even. My son and I did some of that math, and I don't remember exactly what it worked out to, but it was like, you or me spending something like 45 cents.
Oh, okay.
It's literally nothing to this man. And so if he, number one, if he keeps that wealth, and number two, if his money remains good in elections, if Republicans still want it, he can literally buy every race in this country with no real damage to his wealth. In fact, it'll probably make his wealth go up. Right. So we have to make it toxic. We have to make him a villain. He is a villain. And it's important, I think, also for us to point out, right, as you did, like he's fucking around in this because he wants to sell Teslas in Wisconsin. Right. He fucked around in Donald Trump. Like if you look at the things he's doing, and there's been great reporting in Wired and other outlets, right? He has gone fastest at the agencies that were investigating him, and gutted all of the investigations into his businesses and his law-breaking practices. He's now busy awarding himself massive contracts, right? He kicked Verizon out of the FAA and gave himself a $2 billion contract.
Just like comical corruption, like it's so corrupt that it's like a joke,
They are the most bizarre caricatures of like cartoon, like they could be in Scooby-Doo. It's like if the Scooby-Doo villain didn't bother putting on the mask to pretend to be the librarian or whatever, and it was just like, I'm just gonna steal all the money from you meddling kids. Sorry. Fuck you.
Right. Okay, so do you have a target in mind for once you've taken Musk down, or you're just solely focused on Musk?
So my personal belief is that Musk is the most serious threat right now, specifically because if he continues to get away with it, he's going to just keep getting worse and worse and doing more and more, right? Like the Wisconsin Senate is not going to, or Supreme Court is not where he's going to end. Obviously, we need to be fighting on every front. And so I welcome anyone who's fighting anywhere. And I encourage you to keep doing it. My personal target is Musk. And I think if we can get to a point where Musk is pushed out of government, where his money becomes toxic for people to take, that will open a lot of doors for the next wave of fights that we need to have. And so that's my focus is let's get this fucker defanged.
So I'm curious, where do you think the organizing is happening these days? I know you're super active on Blue Sky. I've been seeing a ton of stuff on Substack recently. Reddit obviously has really been like an epicenter. Twitter is such a cesspool, but like there's still interesting things happening there. I personally am very active on TikTok. I'm talking directly to people every day on TikTok. But I mean, I guess like for you, like where are you spending most of your time? But then also like where do you think like the new center is of like the organizing, new digital age?
I think Blue Sky is where the like activist center of it is. But it's all so atomized, right? So you see I think you kind of have to be everywhere except Twitter. Other than a few clients that I haven't been able to convince to get off of Twitter, I'm not on it myself anymore. You know, and I think that's a piece of Musk's empire that we need to stop supporting as well. But you know, I think activists are really on Blue Sky, and that's where I'm seeing like the quote unquote organizing stuff happening, those kinds of conversations, right? As you said, right? TikTok, Instagram Reels, and just Instagram generally are like very good for sort of the engaging with the non-professional politics class of folks. I think, you know, there is still utility in Facebook, Facebook groups, I think especially Reddit. I'll admit I'm sort of extremely late to the party. I've been just sort of like the most casual Reddit user for a long time, and I've only just recently started really activating more on Reddit. And it was foolish of me to not be on Reddit.
It's a powerhouse if you, depending on how you're using it and where you're spending time. But yeah, I mean, I've not been a Reddit guy. I'm kind of the same as you. Like, I've been using Reddit casually forever, but not like really spending time there. And I've over the last like year or so, I've been trying to step up that, which is unfortunate because obviously like everything kind of blew up a year ago on Reddit and it got harder with all the protests, you know, internally. But I do think a lot of the organizing like has like pivoted there in a pretty interesting way, and it's been interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think Reddit, the thing that I find most useful and interesting about Reddit is just seeing what people are talking about. And you can both see, like, you can dive into some of the subreddits that are very much peopled with folks who are just like so focused on the news and what's going on. But then just like, right, like our Seattle is a great barometer for me. Or, you know, like the Am I the Asshole threads and like political things popping up on them, and how are people interacting with this? And I think that it's interesting because, you know, you hear all of the sort of like the Jared Goldens of the world or the Marco Rubios of the world who are like, well, you have to be on Twitter because it's the place to talk to normal people. Twitter was never the place to talk to normal people, but it's even less so now, right? But Reddit, you actually do, I think, get a much wider slice, and especially as it has sort of, as Google's utility has gone into the tank with all of their changes and the crappy AI summaries and all of that, like more and more people are turning to Reddit just for like basic kind of search-ish functions. And I think as I watch the conversations happen on Reddit, you can really get an interesting sense of like where sentiment is on things from a spectrum of people that is not, I think, as accessible on any other single social platform.
I work national campaigns. Like, I do a lot of Wisconsin work, but I also work with campaigns all over. And one of the first things I do, I'm a huge nerd for free digital tools. I actually have a newsletter about free digital tools, but one of my favorite is called Mail Brew. And it's great for 30,000 foot view of Reddit. Essentially, you can set it up to once a day, send you an email with the top hits in any subreddit you want. So every morning I wake up and I was working a race in Nebraska, one in Texas, one in wherever, and I just have like all these hits. So like I'm following the news in other ways too, but then every morning I see what were the biggest posts in the subreddits of like, you know, Nebraska politics, Texas politics. It's such a great way to just very quickly see what like, you know, normal people are talking about, because Reddit's not exactly normal, but yeah, like you said, it's way more normal than a lot of the other platforms these days, certainly more than Twitter. And just getting a sense of like what people are talking about is invaluable. Like, even I might have known about the story, but I didn't necessarily know that it was important until I saw that, oh, this thing got 15,000 upvotes. Like, I should give this story another look, you know? So yeah, Mailbrew, it's a free tool and I love it. I've been using it for years. So not necessarily about Tesla, but like for you and the work you do, you work with a lot of clients. Like, how do you decide which stories to focus on? Like, we're drowning in content, we're drowning in noise, like they're literally flooding the zone with shit, like intentionally. Like, when you're advised, like I'm very interested because I see your social all the time, and I think you're really good at, like I said, like finding these stories and like really honing in on certain things in a way that, like, I think you're a really strong voice online. And I'm just curious, like, how you think about like which stories to focus on and which to just like ignore, and not just for you but also for your clients. Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most basic piece of it is what is going to affect normal people's lives in a tangible way, right? And so once I have my frame in place of I'm looking for stories that actually make a difference in someone's day-to-day life, right? Then it's just a matter of people might not think about, whatever, RFK firing a bunch of scientists as affecting their day-to-day life. So how do I make sure that you draw that line clearly, right?
Got it.
People might not think about, this one's actually sort of interesting, right? Because air travel is something that nearly everyone participates in some way. One of my longtime clients is the Association of Flight Attendants. I have the great pleasure and honor to work with Sarah Nelson closely. She is everything that you see and more, just a delightful and
rock star for sure. Yeah.
And flight attendants are the unsung heroes of aviation. But aviation is one that people have very strong feelings about. It's something that many people are sort of nervous about or scared about, or have some kind of experience of that's very tangible, and we sort of hold it in a very different place, right? I mean, you can tell just by like how many people are nervous about flying who don't hesitate to get in a car, despite the fact that statistically you are much much more likely to be injured in a car than in a plane,
especially if you're in a Tesla.
Right, exactly. Your plane is almost certainly not going to burst into flames
right.
with own volition. So aviation stories and all of this shit with Musk mucking around in the FAA, firing air traffic controllers, firing the people behind the scenes, like those are actually stories that you can draw some really interesting direct experience things to, that it's actually kind of vague and distant from people's lives, but because people have this attachment to aviation, you can actually make a point pretty clearly. But then there's other things that have a very direct correlation to people's lives that are much harder to make them see, like this is how this is going to affect your life, right? So just for an example, I'm not currently working with any education unions, although I do and have, but like school lunches, when you're talking about education policy, right? Like school lunch is one that's really easy to hone in on. And so when I'm trying to talk to people about attacking the Department of Education, right, there's a few things I'm looking at. I'm looking at things like, this is going to mean that teacher who gives, your kid with a 504 plan, the, extra help, that teacher is going to get fired. That free lunch that makes it easier so that you don't have to get up in the morning and think about what's my kid going to eat, or did I reload my kid's school lunch account, right? That's going to get cut. So it's those kinds of super tangible things to try to get people like, hey man, that thing that they're doing that sounds vague and incoherent actually is going to make your life harder every morning when you now have to get up and think about, what is my kid taking to school for lunch today? Yeah.
Who do you think is doing digital well right now? Organizations, electeds, whoever, activists, like who are you like looking to that gives you hope and that you think is like doing it right?
What does it even mean to do digital well?
Yeah, hard to say.
I mean, I love AOC and Jasmine Crockett. I mean, I think the key anywhere, anytime is like just being as authentic as you can, right? And right now, if your authentic is not, I'm fucking mad, then first of all, what are you doing here?
Right.
And if you're not expressing that really clearly, then what are you doing here? I think it was Jamel Bowie had a little thing yesterday. I'm confident it was Jamel, where he was like, I don't understand why there weren't Democratic senators at the State of the Union, like putting their finger in Trump's chest as he was moving through the audience or whatever. Like there's so much hunger for leaders to be like standing up and fighting. And so I think the organizations that are doing that, right? Indivisible is doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Tesla Takedown, right? Like, honestly, when I was 12 years old and watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure for the first time, like, okay. Is there anyone in the world who thought in 30 years, Bill S. Preston Esquire is going to be leading a volunteer army to take down the world's richest Nazi. Like, no, that's preposterous. And yet here we are, right? Because he's just somebody who was like, fuck no, I'm going to use what I have to do what I can. And people are just like rallying to that sort of stuff. So, you know, the people who are doing well on digital are the people who are fighting and being clear about it. And the people who are doing poorly on digital are hedging and hawing. Actually, it's, you know, one that I just saw, like I was literally reading the email before we get on, is David Hogg, one of the Parkland kids who runs Leaders We Deserve. So the subject line of this email is "This shit is why we lose."
I saw that.
Right?
Yeah,
right off the top. You know,
it was an organizer meme.
He uses
post,
the
right?
organizer meme here, and it's about this ridiculous third way, you know, strategy meeting that we got this memo from that said that, you know, Democrats need to move away from a reliance on small dollar donors, which is like the most preposterous thing, you know. But, you know, David has been, I mean, talk about somebody who I genuinely wish had never been thrust into activism, right? Like he and his classmates thrust into activism because a school shooter came into their school and gunned down 17 of their classmates. Horrific stuff. His courage, what is this, 20? So almost, it's just past 8 years since Parkland. Wow. Is that right? 20, or was it 2018? 2018. So 6 years. 7 years. I don't know. Math. What is it? I'm not a math guy. That's not why I'm here.
No public mouth on the pod. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, he has really built through trial and error an incredible platform. He's somebody that I've had, you know, the good fortune to meet on several occasions, and you couldn't meet a nicer young man. But he just is out there day in, day out, calling it like he sees it, right? He was one of the linchpins of the We Want Walls push to get Tim Walz elevated and you know, make the case. He's been out there, and he leads with clarity. And so people who are leading with clarity are winning, and people who are, you know, hedging their bets and talking about bipartisanship, like, how can you be bipartisan with a king? There's either unitary executive absolute authority, or there's democracy. There's not bipartisanship between those positions, and it's very clear which one the Republican Party is choosing right now.
Very clear in Wisconsin and throughout the country, obviously. So I assume 10 Democrats censured Al Green for standing up during the State of the Union. I assume you're against that. Including a congresswoman from your neck of the woods. She's not your congresswoman, but
thank God for that. I am fortunate to count Pramila Jayapal as my congresswoman.
Nice.
I almost never have to yell at her.
I also have a good one, Mark Pocan. He does good work. So
I do have to yell at my senators, one more than the other. But yeah, thankfully MGP is only my problem in that you know, she's all of our problem. But yeah, I mean, disgusting. Like of all the insane things. So I'm, you know, not by any stretch the only person who's yelling about this, but you know, to see a black elder stand up with courage and confront fascism, and then to watch his colleagues sit there quietly as he's dragged out, you know, and I mean, delightful imagery, him standing there waving his cane.
The cane is so powerful, for sure.
It's amazing. I saw a great meme the other day that was like him standing up with his cane and the like Norman Rockwell like man standing up in the town hall meeting thing next to each other. It's quite funny. But yeah, no, I mean, like I immediately was running to his page to chip in a couple of bucks, and
I saw you tweeting, you know, that, if not, or not tweeting, sorry, Blue Sky. I didn't mean to disparage you.
Whatever we call it.
But I saw you posting about that, like, we should all be kicking in just so the Democrats get the message that, like, it's good politics to make us to you know, do good trouble or whatever. What's it called? And I thought that was a powerful message and a good way to think about it. Whether or not he like needs our money for reelection, like it sends a message to his colleagues that like when you stand up, people notice. And I imagine a lot of folks. I imagine you were not, you know, the only one kicking into his campaign the day after that.
I certainly hope not. And if the responses to my skeet or post or whatever we're calling them are true, then at least a few dozen people saw my post and decided that they would join.
I actually kicked in thanks to your skeet or whatever we're calling blue skies. Yeah. So so on that note, like if you were in charge of the Democratic Party tomorrow, what would you be doing different?
Well, I mean, the Democratic Party.
Yeah, right. It's the monolith that is.
I think the thing that we're missing at the top of the party right now is any kind of clarity that these are not normal times, right? Jeffries and Schumer are really where sort of everything flows from at the moment, right? We don't have a presidential nominee, thank God, for 2028 to head that part up. So, ahead of the State of the Union, while, there were a couple of dozen members of the House and Senate combined who were like, I'm not going to this shit show.
Right.
And meanwhile, Jeffries and Schumer were like, we need to have decorum. And it's just like, decorum? Yeah. Like, what on earth are we on? So, the thing I keep telling people is that I think we need to be in blood and teeth mode. This is going back to the old Elizabeth Warren quote from 2009, right? Where they said, what would your choices be as we're trying to form the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? And she said, my first choice is, a strong Consumer Protection Bureau that can, fight the bad guys. And my second teeth is no bureau and lots of blood and teeth left on the floor. Right. Which is to say, having something that doesn't really do any good is no good. And I'd rather do my enemies damage while they're scuttling this effort. Right. So right now, not breaking any news here. These guys have the White House, they have the House, they have the Senate, they have the Supreme Court. They have all of the richest people in the country funding whatever they want, including obviously Elon just running amok, doing whatever the hell he wants in government with a chainsaw,
right?
Literally. So anywhere that we can cause them some pain, we should be causing them some pain. There should be no easy wins for them. Democrats, there should not have been a single easy vote for a single nominee in the Senate.
Yep.
Right. There should be no Democrats voting for a budget bill unless there are lock solid, as solid as you can get them from these guys, but lock solid guarantees that the law breaking will stop and that Elon's going to be reined in, right? Like either they can own it all themselves, the Republicans, or if they want our help to get something done, they can, behave the way that our Constitution says they need to behave.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff that I would like to see. And I think, whatever way people think that they can cause these guys a headache or slow them down or cause them some pain, we don't know what the puddle of blood that they're going to slip and fall in is or where it's going to come from. So our job is to make as many puddles of blood as we can. Punch them in the nose, punch them in the gut, try to trip them, whatever you can do. Not again,
not
I have
not
to say
literally,
over and over, not literally,
right.
Maybe
you're not advocating violence.
If there's literal
that
Nazis,
is clear based on this conversation.
If there's literal Nazis marching in your community, punch Nazis.
Okay.
But metaphorically speaking, we should be hurting them any way we can, slowing them down any way we can. Because the other thing we know is that these people are all incompetent boobs. They're fucking idiots.
Yeah.
And they're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes will be amplified if we have been, littering the field of battle with obstacles. And so they're not just tripping over themselves, but they're also tripping over the pools of blood that we've put there and the log that I found and threw, or the puddle of mud where I thought they were coming and I peed on the path, right? Metaphorically. So I just think, fight any way you can, anywhere you can, bring your best ideas, bring your dumbest ideas. And if I were in charge of the Democratic Party, I would just say, let's fight. There would not have been a single Democrat, or let me put it this way. We should have shown up to the State of the Union.
Should or should not?
And then we should.
Walked out.
Because if Democrats didn't show up, they would just put a bunch of Republican staffers in there and it would look like a party.
Right.
So what I would have loved to see is every single Democrat sit down, and the minute that Trump walked up to the dais, for all of them to stand up and walk out together.
Yeah. Would have been powerful.
and leave half the chamber empty, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I just think we need to have, and people need to see, like the people who are coming out to these protests here in Seattle are just like the most, I mean, it's a wide cross section, but like I had a couple that I talked to this past weekend. I was anchoring a protest in Bellevue, which is like the richest suburb of Seattle. It's, you know, kind of the side of town where Microsoft and SpaceX and all of these companies are headquartered. Extremely wealthy, you know, very like nice white liberals, but you know, that scene. And this couple that I started chatting with at the protest, you know, they were probably in their 50s, and they were saying how they almost didn't come out to the protest because they saw that it was co-sponsored by DSA, and they're mad at those people for costing the election. It's a hypothesis I disagree with, but we don't need to get into that today.
Okay.
But they went straight from that to, why the hell is Maria Cantwell voting for Trump nominees? Where are our leaders? What are the Democrats doing?
Yeah.
Right. And so you, like, the people that Third Way thinks we're going to appeal to by like throwing trans kids under the bus and, you know, agreeing with Trump on immigration or whatever, and throwing small dollar donors out the window. These are the people who are coming out and are furious. I mean, I'm trying to think of, it was Al Green standing up. Like, I monitor a couple of, Facebook pages and groups that are like largely populated by suburban white women. Okay. And they're like, yeah, hell yeah, Al Green. And then the next day they're like, what do you mean they're voting to censure him? When I say normie in this case, I'm talking about voters who do not have polarized ideological perspectives, right? Sure. These are vote blue no matter who, steady Democratic voters who are not living and breathing politics all day, every day. But they're the kind of voters that we need, you know, to keep moving. And they are furious at Democrats, is what I'm seeing. And and to a person, it's because, where's the fight? Don't they understand what's happening? That's Black people, that's white people, that's Latino people, that's Asian people, that's young people, that's old people. And people are just mad, and Democrats are not helping channel, Democrats writ large are not helping channel that anger.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be an outlet, or there's going to be a million outlets, and those million outlets, I mean, I think I'm very pro grassroots organizing, and I love watching like things pop up. But at the end of the day, if we're not all like approaching this as a party, we can't win. All we could do is like slow them down. But like, you know, it's very hard to imagine like rebuilding when there's not like a cohesive unit. And certainly I think you've alluded to, like, party leadership doesn't seem to understand the moment that we're in. And the idea that like they're demanding decorum and, you know, while the world burns is, certainly not in touch with the grassroots, for sure. How can folks keep in touch with you moving forward? And if you want to tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with Firekit Campaigns, I mean, you've talked a little bit about some of your clients and stuff, but I'd be curious to hear kind of a little bit more about what you're doing. And yeah, how can folks keep in touch with you moving forward?
Sure. The best way to see whatever nonsense I'm spouting at the day is to follow me on Blue Sky. I'm just evansutton.bluesky.social. So my little business here, like I said, I work mostly with labor unions, also a little bit of Democratic Party politics, and some grassroots and NGO type work. And I really just work with folks to figure out, how can we build stories that actually cut through the noise. A lot of my work with labor unions is communicating internally with members, but also, external, how do we make the case for our issues? I don't know that there's a particular way for people to follow along with any of that, other than that you probably can figure out some of the people I work with by what I post about on the internet. And I would love to encourage folks, come check out TeslaTakedown.com, come out to a protest. I'm going to be super honest. I don't like protests. It's not my, like, I'm an internet person for a reason.
Okay. I hear it. Yeah. Same.
And I generally, like, I go to protests because I understand that it's important, but it's not something that I like super enjoy doing. I have been having the most fun at these Tesla takedown protests, meeting interesting people. It just feels good to be out there, like, yelling. It's great to watch the Tesla stock chart dropping and see the media. We were able to get a front page above the fold story in the Seattle Times this week.
Wow.
Might be the first time I've ever been involved in something that got a above the fold front page story. That's pretty impressive. And these things are happening everywhere. And I think the most interesting thing that I would love for people to know is just like the folks who are stepping up to organize and lead these, by and large, are not people like me. These are the most normal, everyday people who are just mad. There was a guy who started one of the ones we expanded. The first 2 weekends that we were doing them here, we just did one location. And then last week we did 5 locations. And we were only planning to do 4, but some random guy set one up for another location. And so we reached out to him and we're like, hey, what's your deal, man? Like, we'd love to bring you into the fold here, be part of our little team. We're having fun. He's just a retired teacher who was like mad, and he thought maybe he could get 5 or 6 of his friends to go stand outside Tesla, and they ended up with like 50 people.
Wow.
I was just talking to a woman who's organizing the one that's out in Spokane, Washington. And for folks who don't know the geography, Spokane is basically on the Idaho border.
Right, East Washington.
This is a part of the state where, very well documented, there are white nationalist militias that go and intimidate lawmakers and journalists. Like, they go and park a red truck in front of these people's homes to threaten them. And this woman, who has never organized anything in her life, she literally, I was talking to her, trying to help her solve a tech issue with her page setup, and I was just like, thank you for standing up. Like, it takes a lot of courage where you are. It's a much different scene than here in Seattle.
Sure.
She's like, thanks for saying that. It's pretty scary, but I've never organized anything in my life, but I want my niece and my nieces and their friends to see that somebody's fighting for them to have a future. These are the people who are hosting these. So you don't have to even have a Tesla dealership in your town. Maybe there's a supercharger station, or maybe you just get some people out to, the busiest intersection in town and wave some signs and have some fun and give some passing Teslas a thumbs down. We've taken to doing a chant here where anytime the light, stops and there's some Teslas that stopped at a red light, we do like it's a baseball game. We do sell your Tesla, sell your Tesla, and people have so much fun. So I just really encourage people to come out to a protest, have a good time, meet some people who also want to fight. And like, hey, Elon Musk's wealth is down $150 billion this year, and 40 plus of that is just in the last 3 weeks since we started doing these protests.
Wild. Yeah, let's see where you can take it. Folks can connect with you on Blue Sky. And does Firekit Campaigns have a website, or they should just find you on Blue Sky?
Yeah, I mean, they can come and look at my website if they want, but it's not going to tell them very much.
That's not where you're sending, folks. Okay.
It's firekitcampaigns.com if you're really that curious. You can.
I'll link the pieces you wrote and some of the, like, TeslaTakedown.com, peoplevmusk.com, your Blue Sky account. That'll all be in the show notes at hellomerchtag.com. But yeah, I always like to let folks kind of send folks where you want to send them, to keep.
Yeah, and listen, if you guys in Wisconsin have some People v. Musk stuff that you need amplified, like, holler at me. I'll get it into all the bloodstreams I can.
Let's do it.
We got to take this fucker out.
We got to win this one in April. And the work we're all doing right now is, it's for the future of the nation. So we'll see what happens. Like, we'll know a lot more April 1, and then we'll know a lot more, I guess, the next time he has a quarterly earnings report, whatever that is. So it's going to be an interesting couple months, and hopefully it's the tide is turning, but we'll see. Thanks so much for coming on the pod. Like I said, I've really appreciated the work you've been doing for a long time. And so it's fun to have you on and get to talk about a campaign that's so important and that you're, like, obviously having fun with. So
thanks, Josh. It was great to chat with you, and onward we march.
Yeah.
That does it for another episode of Hello Merge Tag. Thanks so much for listening. Know anyone who might appreciate this podcast? Please share it with them today. Find all episodes at hellomergetag.com or wherever you stream podcasts. Have questions or want to connect? Drop us a line at hello@reverbalcommunications.com. Until next time, keep on telling your story.